Hello, I'm Carmina, and I'm going to present you my project. So I started researching about the brain because I was always fascinated by it, and I knew that there is the conscious part of it and also the unconscious part of it. But this project started from the idea that I realized that over 95% of our mind is unconscious. And we often walk through life believing that we're all in control, but then we know that, again, over 95% of our mind is unconscious, so how do we know that for sure? And this project is the result of a collapse, and it started with a fight with my identity. For the context, I'm from Romania, and I always kind of had a hatred for my country and for my identity overall. And I wanted to become the subject of my own research. And the aim for it was that I wanted to provoke collapse. So basically, I wanted to subject myself to a lot of things that I didn't like as a kid and so on, in order to experience this mental collapse. And what does that mean? I wanted to expose myself psychologically, and I wanted to do so by immersing myself in sites of historical violence, isolation, and superstition, just to try to reconfigure these external landscapes into internal mappings of psychological vulnerability. And when I went to Romania back to for my research, I had this kind of map that I had always in my pocket, and I had this kind of places that I always wanted to go to, like, I don't know, for example, Dracula's castle, which we all know it has a vast history and so on. And the point for going to all of these, like all villages and all of these kind of places, was that I wanted to respond to a few questions. For example, how does the brain respond to the representations of death? Or how do systems of control persist psychologically today? Or how do stories passed through generations encode generational trauma? And so I went to all of these like old houses, old villages, and even to my father's grave. I don't know, like basically the idea was to immerse myself into all of these like very psychological sites. And for me, this was Transylvania. And my project is the mnemonic of a scarred identity, SUTURA. Now, what is SUTURA? So SUTURA means suture in English, which comes from the idea of tying two things together. In my project, that means past and future, but also personal conflict and this collective unconscious. So it's a mnemonic to a scarred identity that helps navigating the mental collapse through digital and analog interfaces. And this is a little trailer. And so basically, this project is a multimedia project that explores mental collapse and identity by merging folklore and modern technology. Why folklore, you may ask? Because folklore is already a language for psychological states, and it has always been a way for people to try to express these fears and anxieties and existential struggles. So in Romanian folklore, we have all of these kind of symbols and patterns that are everywhere, in ancient books, in wood carvings, in I don't know, embroideries, in everything. And they look something like this. But then we also have this kind of rugs, which as a kid, I always hated this kind of rugs. I was like, asking my family to throw them away and stuff. But now, like researching more about my identity, I realized that this is such a beautiful rug, actually, just because it's actually a language. Because every single little icon from it, people were embroidering them to express a feeling or a memory or something. And I wanted to manipulate the structured patterns that it have to reflect this psychological disintegration. And why technology? Because the aim of the project is to also make subconscious states visible. And I wanted to do so through an interactive space where visitors can basically engage and reframe their own stories through these EEG-based projections. So basically, to change the projections based on what they were feeling in the moment. And what is an EEG? For those who may not know, an EEG is this neuroimaging technique that records brain activity in real time. And in my research in Romania, in all of the places that I've been to, I had this Muse headband on my head, and I was recording every single time all of the data just to see exactly what I was feeling in those kind of moments. And this is, for example, from a session of like, I don't know, 2 minutes. So it was already a lot of data. And then obviously I had to go on with the visual system. And again, I started researching about all of these kind of patterns. And as you can see, people were doing them especially to reflect something. For example, the eye meant protection and so on. And so I wanted to go through like all libraries, and I started researching on them because there were a lot of different types. And then in order to go with this visual system, I obviously had to create a base, because in every region in Romania, even though the symbols express the same thing, they look quite different. So I wanted to start from a base. And then I did that CSV data, which is kind of the logic for my whole project. Basically, if the waves from your brain, like the alpha, beta, theta, are all low, then you make a sun for it, because it means vitality. And then here is a bit of like a trust the process situation, where you just take all of these elements and you combine them. And then when you do it more and more, and you just multiplicate them and reverse them and so on, you already have the same logic that they were using, for example, in these kind of old rugs. And well, this is a poster that I did, which just has the meaning of the mental collapse. And in my research, this is the route that I had. It was a very long route, and I had to go in a lot of places. But what's important here is that I wanted to collect a little piece of something that I was finding on the floor or whatever. And I chose to get these aluminum cans, which I'm going to explain why in a second. But basically, I already had, obviously I took also the photo of the cans that where I found them. And these gave me some coordinates, right? So for example, I went to this village, which is called Viskri village, and I got these coordinates. And then through code, I expressed that into a little bit of a pattern. And then, well, now I'm going to show you all of the places that I've been to and their coordinates as well. And so this was another poster that I did that basically expresses just the places that I've been to. And then I also wanted to create an aluminum storyboard, because I also said that the aim of the project is to make subconscious states visible, but I also wanted to make them tangible in a way. So I wanted to do so through a storyboard of my journey, where every piece represents a keyword of what I was feeling in those moments. For example, anxiety, ego, memory, and basically transform cartography into this emotional weight. And why aluminum? Aluminum is a cold and reflective material that symbolizes stripping away from the conventional materials. So instead of doing it from fabric, I chose to do it from aluminum. And it means this constant fight with identity. And then I went to, and I did a Rhino tryout. I did the flat vector, just the base of what I needed to do the puzzle to look like. Then before doing them in aluminum, I had to buy all of these wood planks and laser cut everything into different layers in the letters, then also in the little squares that were part of my grid. And then I started just gluing everything together, and in the end I had the base that was supposed to become aluminum. And this technique is called sand casting. It's basically just boiling the aluminum and making all of these pieces. And well, these are some photos from the process. This is the part where I didn't know what I was getting myself into, because it was a lot of physical work, but it was super fun. And then this part was one of my favorites, because when I was boiling the aluminum, I also put there the aluminum cans that I got from Romania in my research. And then I got this piece, this metal piece, which was the first one. And then, well, I had to do 13 more to create the full puzzle, which looked like this. And then I went on also with the memoir, which was super important. And to do it, I wanted to create these different parents, because I wanted my memoir to be structured on different levels. So I started with a bigger margin, and then at the end it had basically no margin, just because I wanted to be able to cut them and have it structured on different levels. This was the grid. I chose one that is super big, like 13 by 13, just to give me more freedom to play with. This is an example of a short article which had 7 columns, a long article that had, well, either 5 columns or the full page. And you can see here how it was going from a bigger margin to a lower margin just because I had to like cut it. This is the full memoir, and these are just some more spreads. And this is also the cover that I wanted to create from the same material, so the same aluminum. And this is how it looked. Then about myself, I also said that this project is a personal reflection and realization. So I wanted to create a mannequin that resembles myself, and I wanted to project my own mental collapse on top of myself. So I bought this terrifying mannequin, which I had in my house for a long time. And then I did a photo shoot because I wanted to do a 3D scan. And then I refined a bit the 3D. I 3D printed the head. I painted the head. And in the end, I had my head. And for the projections, I said that I wanted to create this interactive EEG where people can basically recognize their own emotional states through these patterns. So I went back to the research. I chose this kind of patterns, and then I created a big one just to give me room to play with. And I started feeling them and, well, giving them meaning, like the memory, myth, identity, and so on. And this is how it works. So basically, you get the EEG values, and then you get the OAC data coming in, and you just put it into Tart Designer, and then I did it in that software. This is an example of my mental state, which is like very, very chaotic because I went through all of those things in Romania. And this is a very basic state where people were basically starting from like before putting their EEG on. These are just, well, photos from like preparing everything, the projections, and some photos from the presentation. And as a first visualization, this is how it looked like. So basically, someone was coming, sitting on a chair, and you were seeing me there in front of you, and you had some kind of projections that represented my mental collapse. But then when you put the EEG on your head, you start changing everything and reframing your own story. And well, this is a little video that just summarizes a bit what I said, and yeah.
We often walk through life believing that we understand ourselves. But what if most of who we are is hidden beneath layers of repression, memory, myth, and fear? Given that over 95% of our mind is unconscious, SUTURA proposes a cartography of the unconscious. It uses EEG technology to capture brainwave activity and map emotional states, connecting these to symbols from Romanian folklore. Instead of charting physical territory, it maps internal landscapes, emotions, traumas, and ancestral memories through an algorithm that links brainwave combinations to folklore symbols, often referred to in the project as the mnemonic of a scarred identity. The user's brain activity is visualized in real time, creating a living, reactive map that blends technology with ancestral knowledge. The goal is to explore how intangible experiences can be externalized and spatialized through contemporary tools. This multimedia installation explores the intersection of neuroscience, folklore, and identity. The viewer's emotional and cognitive states are translated into dynamic patterns linked to Romanian symbolism, reflecting inner turmoil, calm, or fragmentation. At the center of the installation is a life-sized human form, part body, part vessel, that receives evolving projections based on the participant's mental state. These visuals surround and imprint onto the figure, symbolizing internal scars and demonstrating how identity is constantly shaped by external influences. The project also includes an aluminium structure that contrasts the organicity of folklore with a cold, industrial material. Chosen for its reflective, rigid nature, aluminium becomes a metaphor for dissociation, resilience, and the rejection of tradition. Alongside, a memoir expands on SUTURA's core story and unfolds on 3 narrative levels: personal experience, symbolic interpretation, and field research, with a cover created from the same metal, creating a tangible dialogue between material, memory, and meaning. The installation becomes a map of mental collapse and reconstruction, a personal myth rendered through machine logic, emotional feedback, and fractured cultural heritage. This is SUTURA, a collective unconscious.
And so therefore, if you could see that 95% of your mind, the unconscious one, would you want to see it? Thank you.